I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We're not alone. We are not alone in this universe, and it is a simple fact, and the U.S. government has been aware of that fact now for decades.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Describing these vehicles, describe them as alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs for short.
If you believe we have crashed craft, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
And wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
Welcome to episode 3 of Into the Unknown. So, word of advice, this is going to be a long episode. It just has to be because of what we're going to be talking about today. And I highly, highly recommend go over to YouTube on Thursday. This is going to be up. This is recording on Tuesday. It's going up. Same day up on Patreon for anyone that wants to join there and support the podcast. So there's been some weird things going on. We all know General McCasland. We've been talking about him. And we also vaguely mentioned a NASA Jet Propulsion Lab scientist that went missing as well 8 months ago. Well, we're going to go in depth on that because why this isn't still in the news and why this isn't being reporting on, to me, I'm looking at this whole situation as if there's no UAP involved. Now, let me adjust the camera here a second. So there just is because of who's involved in this. We're going to see what I mean by that in a second. Sorry, I had to make some adjustments. We're going to see just how insane this whole situation is. So looking at it from the skeptical side, right? Because I know people are going to be like, oh, UFOs, UAP, whatever. It doesn't matter if you believe in that. This should be deeply unsettling what's going on. Because this NASA JPL scientist, whom we're going to name and we're going to look at, she disappeared 8 months ago. Well, guess who she worked for who she worked directly with and underneath? General McCasland for years. So if we have a Jet Propulsion Labs scientist that goes missing, that works on propulsion, she works in the propulsion lab, and her specialty was making components for rockets and other forms of propulsion that could withstand basically whatever heat you throw at it. If she goes missing and then her boss essentially goes missing 8 months later, they both just basically vanish. And it gets even weirder because she was declared dead 4 days of disappearing, even though, and get this, the next day when she disappeared, that next morning, they even used FLIR, and all they found in the area was a bear. She literally pretty much vanished in front of people's eyes. Now, that's an opening statement. So we're just going to go ahead and get into this. For those watching the video, which I highly recommend, we're going to switch to monitor 2. So the background for this, we're not even doing news in this because this is just, we're just getting straight to it. So the background for this is going to be from the Sentinel briefing. Again, the links to all this stuff's going to be in the description. So this is called the Green Burial. She was declared dead 4 days after she vanished. The helicopters were still searching. So think about that. They actually were still treating this because you could totally survive where she went for a lot longer than 4 days. But someone declared her dead. and a bunch of other weird stuff, like they basically made a memorial page for. Like, it's very, very disturbing. I'm going to hit certain points in this, but this opening paragraph here, the wave, I am going to read verbatim. So I want you to go read this article on your own, but this is very important for anyone that doesn't know who this was and what's going on. So this is part one, the wave. On June 22nd, 2025, a 60-year-old woman waved at her hiking companion on a ridgeline in the Angeles National Forest. She was 30 feet behind him. Bright red shirt, green hiking pants, clear weather. A route she hiked every week. So keep that in mind. The weather was fine. She did this every week. She had bright clothes on, and she was only 30 feet from who she was with. None of that makes it sound like she should have disappeared, does it? That wave is the last confirmed contact anyone had with Monica Jacinto Reza. And I'm sorry, ma'am, if I'm slaughtering your name. Every news outlet that covered this story ran the same framing. Missing hiker, rugged terrain, please check your cameras, standard template. What none of them reported is who she actually was. And we talked about that with the McCasland case too, who his wife is, who's actually a physicist, and the quote-unquote concerned neighbor was a business partner essentially in all this. They don't mention that in the news though. This whole situation's so bizarre. Reza co-invented a Mondaloy, or Mondaloy. I'm not sure how, I've never heard it pronounced, so I'm not sure. But it's a family of nickel-based super alloys now built into the engines, replacing Russian-made rockets for American national security launches. She held the patent, and they have links to everything as they go. So this is extraordinary. This is written like a real research paper. She spent decades as a technical fellow at Aerojet Rocketdyne, the highest technical rank in the company, an associate fellow at the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. At some point after 2023, she moved to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. That matters because of what happened 8 months later. On February 27, 2026, retired Major General William Neil McCasland walked out of his Albuquerque home and into the Sandia Mountain foothills, left his phone, left his glasses, left his wearable devices, took a gun and his wallet, and has not been seen since. He also took a backpack, which they didn't mention here. So it's almost like he walked out knowing someone's going to come after him and he didn't want to be able to be tracked. See, that's what gets weird with not with this, but with the mainstream media. They don't tell you that stuff. In the Ghost General, we mapped McCasland's career. So we're going to do the next episode, which I'm going to record probably tomorrow, is going to be on him, because this is looking nefarious now. He commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory from 2011 to 2013, overseeing the $4.4 billion portfolio that funded the most sensitive aerospace research in the country. The portfolio funded Monica Jacinto Reza's work. Her alloy is in the engines his budget was actively building. And they even said, we did not expect the general's trail to lead here. So now we're going to hit some main points in each section. But there's a picture of her too at the Aerojet Rocketdyne. The credit for this one's from Aerojet Rocketdyne, and then if we go back up to the top, this is from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department on the right. So you can see there's the helicopter with the FLIR actively searching for her. Let's come back down. So this is just so bizarre. I know I'm kind of flustered and all this, but this is really, I don't understand why this isn't huge news. Two of them going missing that worked on the same things. One was a major general. The other's a NASA scientist that owns patents that saved our space. Basically, she saved most of our, well, we'll get into that, but she saved Americans sending satellites into space. So the sweet spot. So here's where we're going to start hitting like main things. So American rocket designers had a problem for decades. The Soviets could build oxygen-rich, staged combustion engines. We could not. Not because we didn't understand the physics, but because we couldn't find a metal that survived the environment. So basically they had two problems when you would try to make anything metal for like the engines or any of the parts, right? It would do one of two things. It would either crack or it would basically light on fire. Or it could do both. Because, you know, it's super high heats when you're dealing with like rockets and things like that. Like, I mean, we're talking like thousands of degrees. So what we were doing is we were relying on Soviet, well, it would have been originally probably Soviet made, but it was, yeah, the Soviets could do it. But then we ended up having, the Russians were making them. Like all the metals and like the engines and stuff like that. So in the mid-1990s at the Rockwell Science Center in California, a metallurgist named Dallas Hardwick and her research assistant, Monica Jacinto, cracked it. They found a nickel-based composition that could sit in that inferno without igniting and without cracking. No coatings, no liners, bare metal touching gas, oxygen at extreme temperature. Now, because of this, they actually named it after our missing woman, Monica. They named it Mondaloy, which is why I think it's probably Mondaloy. You know, the name is a portmanteau, so it's like where you take two names and kind of mash them up together. So like the Mon part belongs to like her name, Monica, you know, then alloy, of course, because it's an alloy. So this is where things get interesting as far as this part of it goes. So in 1999, the Air Force Research Laboratory, or AFRL, so keep that in mind because that is specifically in 2011 what General McCasland takes over, started putting money in it, and then NASA followed. So the lab scale alloy became two different variants, and this is where it also, this stuff's kind of heavy, but it's important. So there was 100 and 200. So it's different chemistries for different heat and pressure ranges. You can cast it, forge it, and 3D print it. So think about that. If you can 3D print stuff, we could actually make this then. If we went to Mars, we could use it for rocket components. So this is a huge deal. 20 years of material qualifications, component testing, and integration work. Like all of it. She oversaw everything. And then in 2017, Space News even profiled her. They did like a big write-up on it. So as far as like what she's replacing from the Russian RD-180, so that was the rocket engine we talked about that launched our national security satellites. 12 components, it says, inside that engine are Mondaloy. Pre-burners, turbine rotors, turbine housings, ducts and lines, and hot gas manifolds. Every part that touched fire was made by her alloy. So then we had the hydrocarbon boost technology demonstrator, which is the Air Force's program for a reusable 250,000 pound thrust engine, also used it. Now both of these are Air Force funded, both flowing through the AFRL. So you already have like two sides, right, of this. You've got the government side and you have more of the civilian side. Because the part where we're saying for national security satellites, you could also use that technology just for satellites too. Now, the patent is public record and they have a link to that. And then Cal State in 2021, they had a big write-up on her. And then it says Hardwick, you know, the mentor, later moved to the AFRL in Ohio. And then by 2025, she was leading all material researches for advanced gas turbine engines. So her group was the AFRL Materials Directorate. So that was now officially the government half of the Mondaloy partnership. And then whereas Reza built the alloys at Aerojet Rocketdyne, you know, it did whoever else needed it that wasn't government related. So we had two women, two institutions, and one program. Now, when McCasland took command of the AFRL in 2011, Hardwick was still there. So all three of these people are connected now. So he's connected to the missing JPL scientist, and he's connected to her mentor. They were all active and all there at the same time. So remember that. If you hear anything in the media about them not knowing each other, not only did he know her, he knew her mentor. So he knew both people that created the alloy. Now, Hardwick, though, it says retired in 2012 after she got a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, but she continued to work with them until she passed on January 5th, 2014. And then after her death, too, like, Reza even publicly said, like, I couldn't have done this basically without her, you know, like, I hope that she knows that. And then it's going to get into 30 feet. So this is where it says 3 hikers departed the 6,000 foot day use parking area. And it actually shows it too right here. So you can see, how would somebody disappear here? It's a little, technically, yes, this is rough terrain because it looks kind of a little hilly, and you know. But look, this is all, we're going to actually make this bigger. So this is just, oh, you know what? Now that's weird. Scale filter. I just realized something. Fit the screen. There we go. I don't know why that happened. So now you can see the whole photo if you're watching the video. So you can see this terrain, like this runs up, you know, and it kind of winds this way. But there's really nowhere, in my opinion, a person should be able to disappear. Like, there's trees here and there, but I do mean that here and there. I mean, it's California, you know. And in the area that this is in, it's pretty open. Like, you could probably see from down here where my mouse is, if you can see all the way up here. I mean, that's what at least a quarter to a better part of a mile you can probably see. Because that's a lot further than it looks. And it has the coordinates too. So if you want to go to Google Earth and actually look at this. Now, it doesn't... The thing with this is it doesn't give the other two people's names. I'm guessing just for privacy. But it would be nice to know who they were in case anyone wanted to reach out to them and get statements. But it says 3 hikers departed the 6,000 foot day use parking lot area on Angeles Crest Highway at approximately 9:10 a.m. Now this part we are going to read because this is detailed exactly what happened. And it gives the coordinates, you know, the terrain. So it goes from 7,000 down to 8,000 feet. It's challenging but well maintained because, I mean, the 1,000 foot change is... That's more cardio. But I mean, as you can see, like, again, this is pretty open. So it would just be more your cardio, like how far can you walk? So a neighbor later posted on the Crescenta Valley Sheriff Station Facebook page, what we know is that she went hiking with her yoga group / friends and her car was parked at one of their houses. Read that again. Her car was at someone else's house. She was dependent on the group for transport. So she wouldn't just take off, you know what I mean? And be like, oh, I'll meet up with you later, because she can't leave if she's not with them. One of the 3 designated Subject C in civilian investigations stayed at the bottom of the steep section. So I'm guessing that's probably maybe over in here, because you see it looks like it winds up. Again, this is like pretty visual heavy right now if you're just listening. So I think they're probably down in here because it looks like it winds up this way and goes to the right and then, you know, kind of does this. So my guess is they were either somewhere over in here or maybe even back there. I don't know. Let's see. Where were we? Okay, so Reza and the lead hiker, Subject A, continued to the summit of Mount Waterman and began descending the West Ridge. Okay, so they would have been somewhere over in here, and they would have went this way. Okay, so that makes sense. So independent investigators on the Ice Periton hiking forum, again, if I'm messing up these names, I apologize, reconstructed the timeline using metadata from photos the group took on the trail. So that's fantastic that they have exact times when they were, you know, when they were at these locations. The pair covered a mile from the summit to their last photograph position in 17 minutes. That's pretty good. Roughly 3.5 miles an hour. When you consider that they're going up and down 1,000 feet. I know 3.5 miles an hour, yeah, jog. It's not super fast, but that change in elevation can really kick your ass. Then 0.3 miles more in 5 minutes to the spot where everything stopped. At a northerly right turn on the ridge, Subject A... So actually, we can see where this was. So if it's a northerly right turn, it'll be back in here. Exactly where I said it turns right and then winds up. So somewhere over in here this happened. So at the northerly right turn on the ridge, Subject A claims he communicated the turn to Reza. He says she was 30 feet behind him. He initially reported 30 yards, then corrected to 30 feet, and that's 2 different things. Because remember, 30 yards would be 90 feet, and then 30 feet is going to be 30 feet. Photographic evidence from moments earlier showed 60 feet of separation, so he's already off by 30 feet regardless. If it's 30 feet more than what he thought at 30 feet, or, if it was 30 yards that he really thought, he's still, so, I mean, in this case, 30 feet is a lot, is my point. So Reza acknowledged the signal with a wave. Subject A made the turn. He descended approximately 100 feet before realizing that she was not behind him. He returned to the ridgeline in 8 to 10 minutes, which that's a long time, to be honest. If they were only 30 feet behind, 60 feet behind someone, if you don't notice and it takes you 8 to 10 minutes to get there, something about that to me doesn't add up. He called her name, Subject C, over 1,600 feet away and 500 feet below the ridge on a noisier highway side, could hear his shouts. Monica, who by Subject A's own account had been 30 feet behind him less than 10 minutes earlier, did not answer. Nobody heard from her again. And here's a picture of her. I mean, she's not very big either. She's only 4'11" and 100 pounds. So if someone did take her, if a couple guys grabbed her, or a couple big people, she probably, unless she knows martial arts of some kind, considering that she's also 60, and I mean, she seems like she's in great shape for her age, but you know what I mean? There's a lot to take into account that someone could have grabbed her, is my point. And it probably wouldn't have been super challenging if you have a couple people, because she's not a very big person. Now, I want to stop here for a second, because it does say, like, by dialing 800-222-TIPS, which is 8477, like if you have any information, or use your smartphone by downloading the P3 Tips mobile app. So we'll have all that in the description too. In the search for nothing, this is where it starts to, in my opinion, get really weird. So, Acting Captain Ryan A. Vienna of the LA County Sheriff's Crescenta Valley Station called it an extraordinary search. So Montrose search and rescue led. They were joined by units from, just think about this. They were led by units from Altadena, Antelope Valley, Malibu, San Dimas, Sierra Madre, San Diego, Ventura County, Orange County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside. And this is what I wanted you to keep in mind. Federal partners were involved but not publicly named. It'd be interesting to know what federal partners were involved in this, that they didn't even want to be public. All they did was they thanked our federal partners for their continued assistance. And then LASD, so that's LA Sheriff's Department, Air Rescue 5 helicopter ran thermal imaging sweeps. FLIR went up the first morning after she disappeared. It picked up a bear. It picked up other searchers. It did not pick up a 60-year-old woman in a red shirt. And what's interesting about that is she would have to be completely out of the area, because even if something would have happened to her, there should still be some residual body heat to her, considering that it wouldn't have even probably been 24 hours since she disappeared. They ran an algorithmic pixel matching program through the aerial photography, calibrated specifically to the red of her hiking shirt. If flagged hits, ground teams hiked to each one, Mylar balloons every time. So for once involving something like this, it really was balloons. They mapped every search track on CalTopo, which this is a topography map, if you've never seen one of these before. Let's see. To prevent overlaps across a 40 to 50 mile radius, they ran canines, so they even had search dogs out. They deployed what Vienna described as forensic technology, photography, and airships, so they had drones out looking too. And other specialized tools, with nearly no available resource untapped. One piece of physical evidence was recovered. So about 24 hours after she disappeared, a beanie belonging to her was found in a steep ravine south of the ridge, descending toward Devil's Canyon. Scent dogs tracked her trail from the upper ridge downward and successfully followed it to the beanie. Then they lost the scent entirely. No exit trail, no trail in any direction. Reza's scent simply stopped at the beanie and went nowhere. In October, an independent investigator who visited this site and spoke directly with the subject A wrote, Without significant wind, to me, this meant the beanie got transported there by some walking animal or a flying bird, or someone other than Monica, which would make sense because she can't just disappear like that. The only way that you could probably get that scent to do that is if she literally... Well, no, because it didn't say there was a scent going to it, did it? Because if you had a scent going to it and then nothing from it, she could have technically walked over, threw it on the ground, then walked back. Basically the same way she went down. But it said that there wasn't a scent trail going to it, so that is odd. Multiple civilian searchers who descended the ravine described the terrain as steep, but not steep enough to be fatal if someone fell. So, I mean, we could see that. Let me do this real quick. Let me, I know I'm like doing this almost like it's live, but we're going to highlight that so I can come back to it, because we're going to go back up to this. Because this is what I was trying to say. You can see, yeah, from up here on this ridge down to here is kind of it's a slope. But honestly, none of this is like crazy. Like, we're not seeing like cliff faces, you know what I mean? It's gradual slopes. It's very... This terrain doesn't actually look that bad for having these trails and like things to go running and biking and stuff on. It just seems like it's the elevation changes and maybe the grades, you know what I mean? Because it's probably a 35 grade, maybe up to 40 at times, but that's not fatal. But it would be a rough ride or a rough jog, you know, if you're going up and down like by 1,000 feet or so. So the day she went missing, someone reported hearing a woman screaming in the general vicinity. The original witness was never publicly identified. The time and exact location were never disclosed. So that to me tells me one of three things would have happened. Because, I mean, it's really the only three options. Something would have attacked her. Someone would have attacked her. Or she would have fallen. But if the searchers there said that nothing there is enough to be fatal, and they never found her on FLIR or anything, we can probably rule out that she fell. So then that just leaves the other two. And if a mountain lion or something along those lines would have got her, there would have been... If you've never seen the result of a mountain lion or a bear attack, consider yourself lucky. And needless to say, there would have been signs that someone got attacked by an animal. To me, that only leaves the one thing that's possible is someone grabbed her. For whatever reason. And I hate jumping to conclusions like this, but when someone like involved in these kinds of things literally just vanishes, you know, and then you have a major general 8 months later that was her boss also vanish, and it looked like he was gearing up to go, you know, to where someone couldn't find him, then I have to assume that someone probably grabbed her, either for her own protection or for something, you know, not so great. So a lip balm was later found far from both the last known position and the beanie. Subject A insisted it looked new and was hers. The only photo provided showed it looking weathered. But apparently, like, people on the forum said that's a common brand, and it really could have belonged to anyone. And they shouldn't be saying that it's hers because I guess a lot of people use that brand. My guess is it's probably like Burt's Bees or something. On June 29th, 1 week in, Vienna announced the conclusion of the initial response phase, which is normal. I mean, it's a week later. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, you know, everything we keep hearing is that she disappeared. Well, the case was transferred to the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau for missing persons. So Detectives Shannon Rincon and Richie Sanchez were put on the case. So it's standard procedure, it says, for unsolved missing persons in LA County. It does not include a presumption of foul play. But, I mean, I don't know. It tells me, though, if there's enough people in LA County that go, you know, that disappear and end up being murdered, that we probably should assume that this is a good possibility that she was. Because, I mean, if that's standard play for someone in that county, that's not normal. I mean, because one of the things that I follow that's not weird is a lot of my family is a huge law enforcement and military family, so I'm heavily into like cold cases and missing persons cases, and a lot of times it's just well, there's still a missing persons case, you know, and sometimes they'll get transferred like that, sometimes they don't. But the fact that it said specifically in LA County that that's normal tells me there's probably a lot of murders there. So now we're going to get into subject A. So subject A is not publicly identified. So what follows is sourced from the it says Ice Periton, but we're just going to say from the hiking forum and from Reddit's SoCal hiking subreddit and the Help Find Monica Reza Facebook group. So he's described as a yogi who operates a wellness business that includes taking clients on outdoor excursions. So she was not merely a hiking friend, she was a client. His post-disappearance behavior drew sustained scrutiny. So one Reddit user documented that this yogi is still out there searching for her in the heat and rough terrain. He was very adamant about searching every bush and rock. The same thread included a counter-analysis. It is probable that he is building an alibi to protect himself and his wellness business. I mean, it could be either one, but I hate jumping to conclusions on this. Let me just finish what they're saying. So let's say I was a yogi and I killed one of my clients. Why would I create a fake scenario where I lose someone on my own hiking event in a well-traveled area? This totally jeopardizes my business and makes me the last person to see her, which is true. I mean, like they said, it's a fair argument. However, we've also seen, I say we because I'm sure some of you listening follow like missing persons cases and stuff too. There are a lot of times the murderer actually helps. I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny. It's just completely ridiculous because of the narcissism in it. A lot of the times the murderer does actually help search. I mean, that is a form of alibi with this. So that's really like what it's getting into here. Organizers would not share previous search routes and became very guarded with information. Which I agree, this is a huge disservice to Monica as volunteers were searching the same areas over and over again. And that kind of does they need to have that available, even if it's not public, they need to have it available to someone in charge. Because if you're really looking for someone, you don't want to waste energy, right? I mean, the more you search the same areas, you're just wasting time at that point. Let's see, 2 months in, subject A was still searching. And this is still just kind of like showing that the arguments about the two. So the pace on the ridge was 3.5 miles an hour, a jog on descending terrain with a 60-year-old woman who was 4'11" and 101 pounds. That's how you create separation conditions, because it says that they were like split before disappearance. Then the distance shrinks in the retelling, but the photos show 60, which is true. I mean, that's what I said. There's a discrepancy there. This is really just talking about the discrepancies. Then the silence. So this is really, this is part, like it says, that makes it sting. So like until 2023, every public record listed her as a technical fellow at Aerojet Rocketdyne. You know, like everything that I had mentioned that they had. Then on 2024-2025's Dean's Advisory Board, a different listing, Monica Reza, JPL NASA. So sometime between 2023 and 2024, she moved from where she was to